As far as I remember, how I got to the orphanage is unknown because there's no such record as to how I got there due to when we were little, the orphanage moved to the different locations, and during that time, they had lost all the records of the kids that were being transferred to the different facility, and that's pretty much it. Growing up in an orphanage. That's all I remembered. I don't remember anything else. And so I would imagine that I was a baby when I got to the orphanage. What I remember distinctively as not so much an infant stage, but more like a toddler stage, preschool stage, is that we would be sitting in a big giant room where there's no toys, nothing around it, and just sitting against the wall, just against the wall, hitting back and forth. And I don't remember much about just being a kid. It was just a big, huge group, a number of kids, and just sitting together with just absolutely nothing to play with. It is something that I don't want to recall it, just because it seems like I try to think of the happiness while I lived in an orphanage, and there's just not much there, and more of on the darker side, I would say, because we my orphanage was very small. It was a sort of private run by this lady who immigrated from Hawaii, and she wanted to eventually just keep so many numbers, 28 girls, and take those 28 girls as her own kids. And so we sort of grew up together in a small orphanage. And she was Korean lady, but yet she grew up in the United States, so she didn't really know a lot of the Korean culture. And she had a couple who mainly was the main caretakers for us. And our director, the Janet Wang, she would be the more of a person who would trying to bring in the money to run the orphanage. And so she would be often, go back to the United States, trying to, bring in more sponsors so that there is plenty of money for her to continue to run the orphanage. And so it was more of our relationship was not with her, but with these two caretakers who were a wife and a husband. And they were not a nice people. And it was like a lot of things we remember living in an orphanage is that there was a lot of rules, and there was a lot of physical and verbal abuse, and not much food, so we were constantly hungry. And we would go to school, but there was, even in the winter, we would be just walking to school and back. And there was not much free time. We had a farm, so we would, as soon as we get home, we would be out in the field doing our chores and stuff. And so, and another thing is, because there were 28 kids, definitely there are some problems, some mischievous things happens, and, we're just the kids, but these caretakers will literally take it as as if we're in an army, somebody did something wrong, but, we're afraid to come forward and say who did, this and that. And there's one incident I distinctly remember in the wintertime that they made us all go outside in the snow and had to be on our knee and our hands, and we had to do push-ups and until somebody came forward. And and of course, beating up us on, physically was very normal growing up in the orphanage. And we lived in a fear. It was the only time, I guess, that we find some, I don't know, happiness is that when we have visitors from outside the orphanage, like, from church group, or the sponsors the from United States would come visit, and that was those moments that I remember we were at least you know able to play with them, and there'll be some snacks then, and so. But most of the time, we felt like we had no. We lived in a darkest, you know, world, and there was not much of a outside world existed for us. And so even though we went to the public school, it was pretty much from school to back to the facility, and then we had to work hard, and that's what I remember. And the caretaker was they're Christian. Our orphanage was a Christian orphanage, but they definitely, I felt like, did not live up to what it should have been. And not a lot of the girls that I grew up with are, to these days, emotionally, scarred from how we were treated. It was really bad. And, personally, the food was scarce. We did not have much food. And like, for instance, I remember this one incident coming back from school, walking, and literally on the ground, there's a chewed gum. I'll just find it and just eat it, brush up some, dirt and then eat it. And I think that was the way of trying to find a way to, get some snacks and often at night we would go sneak out of the orphanage and go outside of the gate and go to this, the neighbor's garden, and, with still like tomatoes and cucumbers and stuff. And in the middle of the night, literally. And that's what we did. And it was, I think the worst thing that was that this couple couldn't just verbally and physically abusing us. And it was not a good years. I just felt like I never had a childhood. I never did. And I think a lot of the girls that I grew up felt the same way. Because, we were orphans. So no one was going to care for how we felt, how we were being taken care of, whether we were abused or not. We were, I wouldn't say dehumanized, but it was almost, like we were not a human being. To them, it was, useless, unwanted, stupid, theft. And that's who we were. We were labeled that way, whether it was within the orphanage or outside of the orphanage. And so, and then of course there had been some sexual abuse went on with the male caretaker, and I think by the time when I was in the first, I was able to go to high school. The first year I finished it, but then I ended up moving out of the orphanage, not by my choice. It's the caretakers somehow decided that they did not have any money to send me continue to, stay with high school, and so they found me a family where I can go live with them and work for them and continue to go to school. And that was a point that I left the orphanage and I never went back. I stayed in touch with them off and on, and my director was still alive then. And I think that I must have left the orphanage with maybe the sense of the caretakers feeling threatened by me, well, for one or the other reason. I don't know why. And so I was very not welcome in a lot of ways to coming back to the orphanage, just even to visit. And so, I mean, that was sort of my home. I didn't really have any other place to go. And as some of the friends, the girls that I grew up with, and their job was to survive. And once you are somehow got in the on the bad side, bad list by these caretakers, then your life is miserable. And one good thing about leaving the orphanage was that I no longer had to worry about physical abuse and the verbal abuse. That was really good. There was a time when, while I was at the orphanage, I think this was I was in middle school, and something happened, and the heating system somehow, there was what do you call that? It's fire. It's heater. I would say that's a heater, and something broke, and so heating system was not working, and so the caretaker came and started asking us, who, caused this to break, and we all are afraid of saying anything, and so eventually it was, they all pointed at me and the other girl, and I have no idea how that happened, but I was very quiet and naive and not one of those in charge, like an outspoken person. And so he started beating up on her and me, and I mean, to the point it was like he said to count 100 times, and if you trying to put your hands behind, then he would restart all over again. And that was not enough that he put us in a little shack outside. That was in the wintertime. And we stayed there I think the whole night and then the next day. And I think that's really, to these days, I really think that was wrong, and that I had no one to come and protect me. And and the other thing is we couldn't even tell the director about what they were doing to us because of fear that they're going to come back and beat up on us again. And so to this, that was the biggest scar on me, because I didn't do that, and I think it was really wrong for him to beat up a little kids, because of what little thing that happened, whether it was our fault or it happened naturally. It was just so wrong, but it was his right. He didn't care about how we felt. He didn't care about how much we hurt, and I obviously moved on, and I don't let that get in the way. But it's just a lot of unfairness happened. But it was a survival thing for all the girls to not to get in trouble, not to get beat up by these couples, and that's what they had to do what they had to do, and ultimately someone will be sacrificed, and he eventually became a pastor, and at that, I mean, to me, I understand why people do have a opinion about a Christian. And I look at that as, he really was not Christian, even though he said he was. I don't know. It's hard to forget that. And I don't think I would have ever, I believe that had it not been that I was if I was an important person, that he really care about, our caretakers really care about us, they loved us, they would not have done it. But, to them, we were not that important people. We weren't, we were just troublemakers. And that aspect, I was so glad that I was out of there. I didn't have to fear. I didn't have to live in the, fear that, they're going to come and just beat up on us again. They're going to, sexually abuse me. Or believe me, there was a time that it came very close that I could have been the victim. But I was kind of, a lot of ways strong person, not necessarily outspoken, but inside of me. And so I tried to survive, and that's the one reason I'm glad that I was out of there when I was in second year of high school. Once I left the orphanage, it was there was two things that happened. One thing is that I no longer fear of a physical abuse, and I was at peace of being away from these evil people. But at the same time, what I realized was that I was very lonely. I had absolutely no one and no friends, no one to go to. The family that I stay with, it was, I was just like a, housemaid in a way. And the first house that I went to work for had three boys, and it was not the best situation. The orphanage found me this family, and so the boys were range from the elementary to high school, and the parents had a business outside of the house, and so they'd be gone during the day, and I went to night school. Well, so I would be working during the day and then go to night school, and it was yet again I came to this dilemma where the boys were trying to, sexually abuse me. But yet again, that I somehow managed to escape that. And it was really hard. These people really didn't care about, how I felt or my accommodation. I had to share the room with two boys. And often night, I would just wake up with this, boys trying to, touch me physically. But you couldn't even tell these things to their parents because I know that they're not gonna believe me, because I'm just an orphan. I have absolutely no one other than myself. And so eventually I was not happy, and I got, at high school, just one of the teacher actually knew of my situation, and she offered me to stay at her the boyfriend's sister's house. And so I moved there, and it was a lot better. But yet again, it was just a devastation of just being out in the world by all alone. I did not have any holidays. I did not have any breaks. There was no place to go to. I had no friends. And I went to school, but I was pretty much kept to myself quiet because I had nothing to show. It was like it was devastating. But I have to tell you, in the midst of all that, I think that what really kept me going was two things. Is that I was very fortunate to have faith, that I trusted God, and he was my source of comfort and encouragement, and to, stay positive, and just work hard. And then the other thing is my sponsor family. When I lived in an orphanage, all of our girls had sponsors from United States. And once I left the orphanage, I just, I had absolutely no one. And so I happened to have my sponsor family address, and I just sent them written in Korean, just a letter, just pleading my situation, and, and they were very faithful Christian family. And so we stayed in touch, actually, letter back and forth. And that was my only hope. That really got me through. And just continue to pray, and just to trust that God has planned, and that He is the only one out there being a really, truly a friend to me, and no one else was. And so that's how I really stayed to stick with my situation, even though I hated it. I knew that education was important, and so despite of the circumstances, I wanted to finish my high school at least. And so I hopped around probably 3 different families before I finished my high school year. And so that was the my chapter where I was out in the world alone completely, and I couldn't even go back to the orphanage because they just hated me. And some of the girls hated me for no good reason. Probably they had the right reason. They wanted to survive their own too, And and so I barely finished my high school, and then the next chapter comes. Now what? You know, okay, I have a high school degree. I, learn how to type, and so I had some skills. However, I had no place to go to. You know, there wasn't the orphanage at the time. By the time I finished my high school, was kind of in a shambles situation where some of the girls were still there to try to finish up their middle school, and so I knew that going back to the orphanage was not an option, and so I went to a family where I had to work for them because they own a business. And so they ran the office supplies and food and stuff, and below the big business buildings. So my job was to be like pretty much I'd be there to clean up the store and deliver, office supplies to different offices, and so it was not my choice that I went there. I had no choice to. I did not have any choice because I had nothing. Did not have money. I did not have a place to go. The only people that who knows me, and they were ready to take advantage of me, and that was the only way to get where I needed to go. So when I start working for this family, it was prearranged how much they were going to pay me and put the money in the bank, and so it was not much. However, I lived with the family, but yet again, I was not comfortable. I was not a part of their family. I was a worker, and the other thing is, I had no vacation or no free time. Every weekend I worked, and I remember how much I hated the job because here I am. I graduated from at least high school. I have some skills, and I think I'm not that stupid. And yet, because I had no family, no money. The option for me was just very limited to where I can go. And the father, the husband, often we would take off in the morning at like 7 in the morning. I'd be there until like 9 o'clock to work in the evening. And he yet again, he's a Christian man, and often he would corner me and trying to, harass me sexually. And I just hated that. I just, dreaded to go anywhere with him in the morning. But then, yet again, I could not share that to even his wife or anybody. Because bottom line is, no one's going to believe me. If anything at all, they're going to probably, reject me and be harsh on me. And so it was my defense that I keep my mouth quiet of anything that happens that is unfair, to me. And so at the end, I said, this is not what I really want to do. And so I quit. And of course, I absolutely had no place to go. And so I ended up going to Ilsan Center. And that when I knew Molly previously. And so Molly knew who I was, and she welcomed me, and I ended up staying with Molly Holt. And I started working as a volunteer at Ilsan and for about 3 years. And there, it was just like an eye-opening experience, just being in the facility. There were 365 approximately residents, mentally, retarded, physically, unable to do themselves. And what I saw when I got there was that the caring, love, and plenty of food and clean facility, and they're just being well taken care of. And I was just like very confused, like, wait, I was normal, we were normal, not physically, there's nothing wrong with us. And we were just abused, and we lived in a dark world. And here they are, they were just being so well taken care of, and they were being loved and cared. And I just felt like I was cheated, all my life. And that was really, eye-opening to me. Why there is another world exists out there, People do care about these people who were unwanted and were left in the facility, and seeing the care that they're receiving, and it was such a different world. And of course, I think I give a lot of credit to Molly Holt and Bertha, really, because they have really influenced how the people view these unwanted children, because the bottom line is we are all human beings. We are individual, and yet because we were left in the orphanage, that doesn't give anyone right to treat us like we don't exist. We're not human. But that's what happened. That's how we were treated. And being at Ilsan was really, the other thing is seeing all these foreigners come and bring their adopted kids, and, showing the facilities, and I was hearing all this wonderful, successful story. Yes, that hurt me really deeply because, once they were the same boat as I was, they were abandoned, and they were placed in an orphanage. But somehow they got lucky and, were adopted. The family wanted them. And so they were adopted, they have family, and they have education, and they, just unlimited opportunities. And here I was not lucky. my other sisters were not lucky. And so we were not adopted. So we were in a completely opposite side of the world. Once we were on the same boat, but, I said, well, that's life is not fair. Why? But then, you have to think, okay, so that was yours, nothing you can do about it because you didn't do that. And so I think at the point I just felt like I really wanted to, make something happen. I had this little dream, a dream that someday I will go to America. A reason for that is not because America is they call it, land of gold. It's not so much for that. I felt like I could escape from this stigmatism that I'm getting from, my own country, that I could never get out of it. I could never move forward with my life. The dream perhaps I have, I could never achieve it just because, there has been foundation to make it happen. I did not have that. So that was my little dream. It was unachievable, but I had a dream that I want to go to America, where I can just be free of who I am, free to do what I want to do, free from being constantly rejected and being taken advantage of. And because I knew that in America they don't do that, you know, they value who you are, not how you were born and where you come from, whether you have family or not. So working at Ulsan, first year I worked as a volunteer, and then I helped Molly with feeding the kids, taking them to different places. And then eventually I started working in the office within the facility. And I didn't get paid because it was purely volunteer job. And at one point there was an open position, there was a clerk position that was opening. And I knew that I had been doing all the work that, required. So I thought, going to America is not an option. But I do want to get a decent job. I want to get paid well, and I feel like I deserve it. And so I applied for that job as a clerk position. And I think this was a crushing moment that it reminded me yet again who I was, where I am, and how the world is, at least in the Korean country. And the director, calls me in his office, say, in front of me, says, I got your application, but it is truly amazing how you could say it. But he says, because you're an orphan, I cannot offer you that job. Literally. I mean, this is the, social service environment, organization. They're there to look after these unfortunate people. They're there to look after people to succeed. Otherwise, they can't. And for him to flat out say, despite of the credential quality that I had, it was beyond me. I just lost. And so I just hated it. I hated everything, at that moment. This is it. I just don't have any hope. I can't do anything. Yet again, I tried. I failed. Society is making me fail. I can't do it. Because simply because I'm an orphan. There is absolutely nothing out there for me. Unless I choose to go out there, work in the factory, or work for some, family. Yes, there's a number of opportunities for me. but not in an environment where I want to be. You know, good job, good paying, treated decently. None of that was going to happen to me. And of course, Molly Hilton was just angry, angry at these, people, because she knew that I was capable of doing what I was, doing, and that she knew that I could do those work. And so at that point, I thought, okay, I can't stay here. I need to get out of here. I mean, I'm getting older. I need to get a job. I need to start saving money. Even though there was no money, I have not saved that much money because I didn't make money. I had to now think of a way to get out of it and maybe go outside of Ilsan Center and, look for a job somewhere else. So while I was looking for that, then this one of the adoptive family from Oregon came. And one of the things I did was to help them tour the facility with the little English I know. And this was the Colleen and Jean Mayberry, and they brought their 3 Korean adopted daughters with them. And so I got to know them, and I think the mom and dad really, Molly would always tell foreigners my story, how, she's so, I'm certain that she said, she could do everything. She's, so unfair that how people are treating her and stuff like that. And so the Colleen was really wanting to help me out. And I think Molly did tell them that how she's, even though probably it's not possible, that she really wants to go to America. And so I think that was when everything sort of happened. Like, it's a magic. She went home, and she was working for Holt at that time as a social worker. So David Kim and Susan Cox and John Abbey, they all knew who I was because they have visited Ilsan Center a number of times. And so Colleen Mayberry was very intelligent, very caring person. So she talked with them, and I'm certain they brainstormed about how they can help me out to bring me over, and Holt created a job for me. And that's how came to America. Now, at first, I did not believe that this was going to happen. I'm an adult. Obviously adoption is not even in the picture because I'm 23, and but so they wanted to bring me over as a student with the student visa, but that didn't happen because it was difficult, and I obviously did not do well in school, so that didn't help. And so when Molly told me that they were interested in me and then they wanted to bring me over, I was very excited. I couldn't believe that actually that's a possibility, but I, at the same time, was very skeptical that that was going to happen. Because, bottom line is I'm an orphan. No one's going to give me, a visa to let me go to America, knowing that who knows, I may not come back at all. But it was a work visa, so I had to be back. And, but with all this, a lot of prayers and support that was out around me, and I just can't believe that I came to the United States. And that is but I think I have to say that I think my expectation was correct. That the reason I wanted to go to America so badly was that I could be who I am without being judged by people constantly, without worrying about constantly where I'm going to go next, without being, worried about how many are going to be out there to take advantage of me. Even, being married, you have a lot of these girls were married by so and so's, introducing, and it's not necessarily the best situation. And so, and the fact that I can marry who I want, not because I had no choice, so I have to marry this guy. And that all it was clear that my expectation was true. And I I don't talk much about me growing up in an orphanage because I just felt like there was a whole big chunk of my childhood life was just vanished. It would never happen because it was the darkest moment. You know, I don't ever wish to go back, and I don't ever wish upon anyone else. And the girls that I grew up with, they, you know, experience the same thing, and a lot of them have emotional damage from it. And I think the reason I was lucky enough to come up to the United States is that I somehow felt like even though I hate the situation, the life that was given to me, I'm not gonna give up. I was like, I know that if you are just patient and believe in yourself and that continue to have hope and pray for it, something will happen, and you just have to fight for it. Fight it, and I hope that something good will happen, and it did. And I'm so blessed because all my sisters did not get to have that opportunity, and to these days their life is struggle, even though they're all married, most of them. Some of the girls are like being abused by their husbands because you know why? They do not have family who can protect them. They don't have a family or sisters or brothers or mom or grandparents to and go to them and say he's not treating me nicely. So it's heartbreaking, and yet there's nothing they can do. Just living in that situation, in abusive husbands, and it's really sad. And but I think that and I was talking to some of the girls in the last trip that I went, and saw a bunch of several of them, and I think that the hardest time for them to realize who they are is when it's holidays, big holidays. They absolutely have no place to go. Yes, they have their husband side of family that they celebrate, holidays. But when it comes to their own family, there is nothing. I think that's when they realize how, who they are, and it's so unfair. It really is. But there's nothing they can do, and it just that's the way of life for them. So once I came to America, my life has turned upside down. It really did. and and first, I started working for Holt, and I've never had gotten any paycheck. 23 years. Worked hard. I mean, I worked very hard, and yet I did not have any money saved up because no one paid me. So once the first month I get a paycheck, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, wow. It was just amazing, what I can actually get paid. That was truly, I don't know, it was like, wow, this is America. It really is. You work hard, you get paid. You work hard, you get recognized, And that was just, I could never ever thank enough for, people who helped me out to, make my like a dream come true. It really, it was a dream come true. Like it's a happily ever after kind of a deal. Now I'm very blessed because I have a wonderful family. My husband, who's a lawyer. I have two beautiful girls, and when I think about this, I can't imagine my life, me marrying a lawyer, if I had been left in Korea. There is absolutely no way that because in Korean society, bloodline is so important. So when you are an orphan, immediately everyone rejects you. So for you to even remotely dating, high educated person is, even if that happens, the parents, family would absolutely reject you. And so that is just like completely, I don't know how it happened, but it was amazing. And so when I go back to Korea after, being married to a lawyer, their how they treat me is so much different. They actually all of a sudden see you as, wow, accomplished lady, you're someone, you're somebody, And so I met my husband when I was working for Holt. And I think it's just God has a way of continue to bless you. And I just felt like God put me in the right place at the right time with the way I met my husband, and that was really a blessing. But I think this is, after all of that happened, it's a added bonus to me that I met a wonderful husband. But I just want to tell, I guess, a lot of adoptees out there that some are struggling, but I think that most of them are very happy with their family being adopted. They're very happy and they feel very blessed. And I think that's really wonderful. But I want to tell those, a few that are not happy with their adoption experience. I have been in the both side. Grew up in an orphanage all my life. I came here and I all of a sudden have a family. And the difference is that, yes, you probably will always wonder what my life would have been like if I were not adopted, had left in Korea, in my birth country. I can guarantee you that your life would not have been the kind of life you have dreamed. Because even though my orphanage was maybe more of a different situation where it's an individual case where, I'm certain that there's a lot of other orphanages that treat kids, decently and have, good food, and they don't punish the kids constantly and abuse them. But the orphanage that I knew, that I grew up with, was absolutely not the case. And that was really, it's a nightmare in a lot of ways. And, bottom line is orphans don't have the kind of opportunity otherwise you would have if you were adopted. And that's a big difference. And, yes, you always wish upon that you were with your birth parents, and I do too. But, that's not your life anymore, And I think that they have to believe that they were chosen by someone who chose to love them and to educate them, to support them, give them opportunity. And whether you like it or not, the parent chose you to bring you to their home, whether the family is rich or poor or okay. But there's a lot of orphans out there in different countries, in Korea, for instance. Some of them are not so lucky. I did not get chosen by family. Consequence is that you grew up in a society where they put you a label. You're orphan. You no good. You're not accepted in the society. Yeah, you can't do this. You can't do that. It's a stigma you have to live with the rest of your life. And for those adoptees, those are all, the minute they were adopted, those are just vanished. It's gone. They can live a normal life and not feeling like they're being treated differently. And I think that is such a difference between growing up in an orphanage and being adopted. And yes, I wish I was adopted when I was little. I do. I always dreamed of having a family. I always dreamed of being spoiled by these parents. I did. I was always dreamed of eat as much as I can and go to the store and go shopping. That I never got to do any of those. Never. Until I came to America. And I was 23. And I mean, for those of you, I mean, those adoptees that they think that their life is really, sad and unfortunate. Oh my goodness, no, that is not true at all. And I can guarantee you that you were very lucky, and they were very lucky, those adoptees. And that was the thing that I always felt like the difference when I was working for Holt Ilsan. When the adoptees comes, there's a big Holt had this tour where there's a bunch of motherland tour. Group of kids would come, and I would be at some helping, cooking, cleaning for them. And at some point, I'm thinking, well, we were all at one in the same boat. We were all, grew up together. I mean, they were abandoned, I was abandoned, and they're there. Educated, beautiful, good looking, and I'm so happy. There's nothing is preventing them from what they want to do. And I was just such a small thing, actually had nothing, and it's really hurtful. But what can you do? It's just when you're in Korea, that's how you are, and that's what you are, and you cannot go any further. And so I just feel like that adoption is something that I value so much, that I believe 100% that it is a gift that one should never take it for granted. And having family is the most important thing for a child to have, really. Because I have two kids. I cannot imagine these kids not having mom and dad and growing up in an institution. Because the institution life it's nothing like, you grew up in an adoptive family. It's like sort of an army style, maybe worse. And I could not picture my children going through that. And so adoption is an amazing thing. I really do. And those of you who feels like they were not fortunate to be adopted into a family that they maybe had some sort of a dreamed of, let it go and just appreciate it, because there's a lot of kids out there who will not have that opportunity ever, and their life is very limited, and there's no future for them, and it'll be a constant struggle all the way through. And I witness it even today because my friends that I grew up with, that's how they are, you know. And I just feel sorry for them. Not for who they are, but how society put them into, you know. But that's hopefully, things will change. But the I am very, very thankful that I came to America and that this is the part that I forgot. My Colleen Mayberry and Jean Mayberry, they brought me over and eventually they adopted me. Because, not international, way, but once I came and start living with them, and they asked me if I wanted to be part of their family, and then I said yes, and then they were able to adopt me legally. Okay, I'm 23. Most Americans at the age of 23, they are either married in college and wants to get the heck out of, away from their family. I did not have a family, so to me that was like, wow, I can't believe that I actually have a family. Family wants me. Somebody wants me. And to me, that was just the most amazing thing that ever happened to me. And to this day, I am so grateful that they chose me. I mean, they could have said, she's too old. We're not gonna go through all this, hassle and trouble to bring her over here. But and they did. They had love. They care about me, and I'm telling you, be able to go back to them when I'm not happy, when I have questions, when I'm, struggling with things. That is exactly what everyone needs. And now I have a family that I can go and share that, joy, suffering, you know, um, just struggles perhaps. But my friends that I grew up with, those girls do not have that. And I don't know, I'm very blessed. And I love to talk to those adoptees that are not who are struggling. That what why I would love to answer that because bottom line is that they were chosen. You were chosen to be loved by somebody, while you could have been left at the orphanage and be one of the lost one. You know, and that alone is a huge blessing, and I know it, because I'm living it, And after I came to America, I met my husband, and I was able to go to college, finish my college, and, do things that I want, playing tennis, painting, those things. Otherwise, I could not do. And it is a big difference. That's why I am truly blessed, and I'm very, very thankful for those people who, saw that I am somebody.